Hey guys, and welcome back once again to Yu-Gi-Oh! On Sale. Today we are going to do a deck profile of Pack's Eldlich Trap deck that I used in this weekend's UK Extravaganza. I didn't do super well, I'll be honest, so I entered the giant card on the Saturday and I went 1 win, 2 losses and a draw, so I lost at 4 rounds before dropping. Pretty standard result for me in Europe, to be honest. But I think one of the biggest problems I had was that I just didn't really trust this deck enough. And I didn't know enough in terms of when to make plays and the big thing that I think Pac mentioned in one of his deck revolts is with this deck you have to know when to make your plays, like when you're going to torrential, things like that. Because otherwise you spend a lot of time thinking and you waste a lot of time pondering about responses, when most of the time, if you're spending that long pondering about responses, it's not the right play in the first place. So that, I think, was one of the biggest downfalls with this deck, was just I'm pretty used to playing trap decks, and I'm quite comfortable with trap decks, and I'm quite good with figuring out card economy and things like that. So there were a lot of things about this deck that I really enjoyed playing, but there were definitely some issues in terms of knowing all my matchups and things like that. As for my matchups, round 1 I played Prank Kids and I lost 2-0 because I didn't know the deck, so I didn't know what to stop. So it was just a shit show, to be honest. And I was getting really flustered. It was my first game back after 6 months of not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In real life, and it was the first remote, my first remote duel as well. So that was a real struggle. So I lost there. Then I played against Cyber Dragons in round 2. I won that in time, funnily enough, because in game 3 he had made a Dragoon, but then he ran out of time before he could hit me for damage. So I won there, and then game 3 I drew to Dragon Link. That was actually also pretty unfortunate because I actually had the game pretty much. I won game 1, and then game 2 he smacked me for 3k damage, and then I had a Golden Lord on board, but I couldn't capitalize on I couldn't chump block. I couldn't get through his chump blocks, so I had Ecclesia and a Golden Lord, and when I attacked he activated Tidying to summon Dragonmaid to chump block, and then when Dragonmaid died he summoned Brotor to chump block, so I lost because of that. I lost because there just wasn't enough time. However, if I chump blocked with a Horkera that I had face down the previous turn against the Brawl Sword, I probably would have won that, because I would have won game 1, and then would have drawn game 2 to win, and then so that ended up being a draw. And then I played Inferno Knights in my last round. The first game took forever. I stopped him with a whole bunch of traps pretty much the whole time, but then he eventually managed to get out a Needle Fiber and then basically go full wombo combo and kill me. So that was really rough. And after that I dropped. So that was my Saturday. Then on my Sunday I just played a Wintermat. I played Dinos in the first and only round I played in, and I won game 1 and game 2, and game 3 he basically opened evening match both times. So I had really good setup, but I got evenly twice. So that's kind of just unlucky. And that's how I lost in the Wintermat. But quickly onto the deck profile. It's fairly simple. So I'm not really going to go through the deck profile because most of you will have seen Pac's profile. And if you haven't, go and check it out on msd.tv. He did a big long profile. So most lineups 2 Eldlich, 1 Ecclesia, and then the Gamma package. So the Gamma package here was handy in theory because you just run a lot of traps, so you can use this to make sure that your traps resolve. The problem that I had often with Gamma was that I got kind of unlucky in that I had Ecclesia a lot, or I had Nadir. I had the only option I had was Nadir into Ecclesia. So there were a lot of times I had Gamma in hand, but I had Ecclesia on board because I had to search the punishment or something. So that was a bit frustrating. It's something that I struggle with even in some of the other decks I play that play Gamma. I still think Gamma is probably one of the better hand traps this format in terms of effect negation and removing stuff from the board, because that's why Impermanence hasn't been seeing as much play, is because just negating doesn't do enough in this format. Like, you have to clear the threat from the board. So Gamma is pretty good in that regard. I really like the Eldlich engine. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that and why that's really handy, and how that's changed sort of my deck building and ideas around deck building. After that, then Trap Extravaganza, pretty self-explanatory. Trip Nadir Servant, and the one card demise. I didn't draw card demise once in the actual like in any of my actual games. So I drew it a couple times in testing, but not in my actual games, which was a bit frustrating. And then we have the Eldlich package. So here's something I want to talk about a little bit. So the Eldlich package really is the heart and soul of this deck in terms of actually like having a win condition of any kind. And the thing that I found really useful with this was that a lot of the time with this handy card, the triple trap trick, if I had enough like live good traps, I would use trap trick to banish an Elixir, to set an Elixir, and then activate Elixir in end phase just to get the Golden Lord on board to start my engine. Because as soon as you have Golden Lord and like as soon as you have the Eldlich engine, stuff starts to roll a bit, and things start to actually kind of work a bit better, which is definitely a good thing. And it's made me see in some of my testing with some other decks that I play that like this, like the trap package and the Eldliches is pretty much all you need for a Golden Lord package. I don't think Cursed Eldland is necessarily that good. I still think it's good in some instances, but if you're thinking about running a smaller Eldlich package, you definitely can. Like, I didn't feel like I was missing stuff like Eldland, for example. In this deck, like only having the traps was really useful, and then Trap Trick is just so like Trap Trick is fucking amazing at being a card that gives you just as much card advantage, or gives you like as many options to as many good cards as possible. So then we've got the 3 Torrent, came up a couple times, definitely blew out some people with Torrent a couple times, and then Punishment. Most of the time the Trap Trick was actually searching like IDP, which is the next main trap, which I'll talk about in a second. But having access to things like Torrent and stuff was really, really good. It's a bit like these are good. Like these are all really good trap cards, and are all really impactful against today's meta in general. So yeah, that's pretty good. IDP was amazing, like literally amazing all day. I resolved a whole bunch of these, and this card is like literally one of the best cards in the format. I'm maining at least 2 in some of the decks that I play now, just because it's so impactful. Like seeing it, like in theory, it makes a lot of sense that it's one of the best trap cards in this format. But seeing it actually in action in my game, just showcased how ridiculously broken it is, and like the fact, like I would trap trick into IDP a whole lot, just to like out stuff. Like one of my favorite plays was like summon the Barrel Savage, and then I IDP'd on the target to equip so that he doesn't have any gate, and that was good. I mean, that's obviously like a pretty standard play, I guess, with IDP. But like I said, I'm coming back after 6 months of not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! So I thought that interaction was pretty cool, and I thought overall, like I think overall my control interactions with this deck were pretty good. I don't necessarily think there were particularly a whole bunch of times where I misplayed. I think the big thing was like either just not having the answers, because this deck, you can be in scenarios with this deck where you just don't have the answers, especially with the side deck. I noticed like it was really difficult for me to side deck, and that's likely just because I didn't really know the deck on the whole. But I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to side deck. And then lastly, we've got the 3 Strikes and the 3 Working Lines. This card was not garbage. It was fine, but what I noticed was that you can only get away with it in game 1. So they basically got sided out every other time, and I wished I had harder negation a lot of the time. And also, like, the thing with Broken Line is that if people are playing reasonably smartly, like it's just never live. You do get, there were a couple times where like people started forgetting about things like Broken Line, and then like I caught them off guard. So it is handy and useful, but it's not like the best option. Like Pac said in his profile, I think one of the good options with Broken Line is setting it in the same column as a negate, to force through other traps and stuff like that. But yeah, there are definitely times where I feel like this deck, you almost have to kind of play it like a burn deck, and you have to like wait out a lot of stuff, and you have to like strategically take damage and things like that, so that you can build up enough of a trap array. Because the problem with this is like if you do end up losing card advantage on traps, you are fucked. There's nothing you can do that's gonna make you come back from that. So that's something to keep in mind when you're playing this deck. Like I said, the one thing that I really wished I had was more negation. So like I think I would probably look at using harder negation, I think, in future. So like judgments and stuff that are in the side deck. So yeah, that's the main deck. Pretty standard. So literally a complete net deck of Pac's deck. Like I said, I did it not because I'm bad at Yu-Gi-Oh or anything, although I am pretty bad at Yu-Gi-Oh, let's be honest, but because I just wanted to play the deck because I thought it was interesting, and I learned a lot from playing the deck. I just wish that I'd done better by playing a deck that I knew a little bit better, but like there's a lot of usefulness to this deck otherwise. It's just very good. Onto the extra deck, it's pretty standard, so I've separated this off into like the things you dumped with punishment. So Ferrogy, Titanic Clad, and then 3 Intis. She's obviously like stupidly MVP. She's so good, it's insane. Like going 2 for 1 off punishment just makes punishment useful. And then Titanic Clad, you have to start your engine, and then Ferrogy for the card cycling. Ferrogy didn't really come up too much. Came up a couple times in testing, but didn't come up in an actual game. Just because a lot of the time, like I would have a decent enough hand, so the card cycling didn't really help. And then Wind Pegasus at Ignister, another one to dump. Dumped it once, I think, in the winner mat, but like I was already in such a losing position from that because I got even lead that it didn't really matter. So yeah, those are the dump targets, and then we have the generic links. So we got BLS Soldier Chaos, Nightmare Phoenix, Link Spider, and Imduk. So this is the one change that I made because in his profile, Pac said you could use Imduk. These were fine, and I find these particularly important and useful if you need to get one of the trap monsters off board to make BLS, because BLS needs effect monsters. Right? No, it's just 3 monsters with different names. So I lied, not BLS, to make that stuff like Nightmare Phoenix, I found, and things like that. So sometimes that was like, it was semi-useful. I didn't see it, I didn't go into it that much. I think you could probably cut maybe the Link Spider or the Imduk for something a bit more handy. Play these, I hated this. I thought this was useless. I wish this was Leap or Max, Gustav Max, and then Leap or something. So like cutting these two for like a small train package, I think would be kind of useful, because this just, I can understand the reasoning behind it, but this almost never happened as much as actually having 2 Golden Lords on board. That happened more for me. Then Omega as like the general thing. I always play Omega these days if I'm playing Gamma, just for the odd scenario where you can Gamma in your turn and then make Omega, trip a card out of their hand. And obviously it's got its recycling uses. And then the 2 package for the Awakened Dragons in the side deck, and then the Apcolone for the Nelshul in the side deck. None of these came up. The one thing that did come up though that was kind of useful was Ultimate Falcon is really big, which means that you can target stuff that's big with punishment, which came up a couple of times when something was really big with punishment that I had to get over. So that was really useful. And then side deck, Aerial for looping with Apcolone. Again, didn't really come up. I thought about sliding it in a couple times, but again, like I said, I think the biggest problem that I had with this deck was that I didn't really understand how best to play it. So I didn't know what to side in, things like that. So Aerial, 3 Judgments, these were amazing. These went in almost every time. Because like I said, the one thing I really wanted with this deck was more hard negation to like really stop plays. Because if you can swing the momentum back in your favor, then you're winning. 3 Duster, these went in a couple times. I've seen a few tests. I've had a couple of testing where this has been particularly useful against trap decks, where you trap trick into Storm Duster. So that's really useful. Then the Witch Strikes. Yes, I did end up having a single rarity playset, but unfortunately it's the Ultras, not the Secrets. My last Secret's still on its way. Didn't go in. So the reasoning behind that is just like I didn't particularly play against decks that put up a whole bunch of negates. Waking the Dragon went in against Dinos, but then they evenly my Waking the Dragon, which is really frustrating because that, and then obviously the anti-spells and Imperial Order. Again, these theoretically go in for spell heavy matchups or for like when you know that they're going to side in back row hate. But again, I struggled with figuring out what's going to go out. So like the one card that like I knew would go out every single time was like Broken Line, but a lot of the time like Judgments would go in for Broken Line if I was going, because again, like most of this stuff is for going first, right? So the Judgments would potentially go in for Broken Line. But then I struggled to get spots for other things. I would usually slide out like an Extravagance and Nadiras and stuff like that. So yeah, I would definitely just change around a lot of this stuff if I were to tweak this deck and take it further. I think as a proof of concept, the deck itself is just fine to play as is. You don't have to worry too much about making optimal plays. It's a really good deck to test other decks in the meta against. So yeah, like I said, the one thing I really learned about this whole experience of playing again for the first time was just like play something you know. And to that end, I am going to right now, pretty much sleeve up a new deck that I'm gonna start practicing with a lot more intently, just so that I can perfect that deck for the format, or for what's left of the format. There's probably about a month left, and I'm just gonna play that deck because I know it well. And I'm going to play that to prep for the Extravaganza. There's another Extravaganza in the UK in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to play that in a couple of weeks, hopefully. And I will do a deck profile maybe a little bit later or a little bit sooner once I've kind of perfected it and perfected the build. But I think it's interesting, and I think you guys will like what you see. So I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching as always, and I will see you guys next time.